business news, we're news for business people.
Good morning, you're watching Bloomberg Quint Live and this is DayBreak. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alex Matthew. Here are the headlines this morning. Asian stocks mirror Wall Street and open higher ahead of Jerome Powell's first speech as US Federal Reserve Chairman. Punjab National Bank increases its estimate of fraudulent transactions in the Nirav Modi case to over 12,700 crore. ACC and Ambuja Cement put their proposed merger on hold. This is 8 months after they made the announcement. The RBI moves to deepen the currency derivatives market by allowing domestic and foreign investors to take larger positions in the exchange-traded segment. Let's turn to the international markets, and US markets ended the day with strong gains, with each of the three benchmark indices ending the day with gains of over 1%. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle has this complete lowdown of how the trading action panned out in the US markets. Listen in.
Stocks rallied in a big way in Monday's Wall Street session. The Dow, S&P 500, and the Nasdaq all up more than 1%. Now, behind this bullish action was another drop in yields. This takes away the attention of investors from the prospect of inflation, at least for now. Another big source of bullish momentum for stocks in Monday's Wall Street session, tech. The technology sector was one of the top sectors, up more than 1.5%, being boosted the most by Apple. Apple up about 2%. This in the context of a Bloomberg story on the fact that the company will be releasing 3 new iPhones in the fall of this year. Now, chips. This was another area of outperformance and strength. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index up more than 2%, really being helped by Qualcomm, up nearly 6%. This, as it seemed more likely or a possibility that a deal with Broadcom could actually happen. Another chip stock that was sharply higher, AMD up in a popping higher on the session, perhaps a tailwind, receiving a tailwind from Bitcoin. Bitcoin back above $10,000 per Bitcoin. And of course, AMD makes chips that are used to mine cryptocurrency. So some strength there. But it wasn't just some of the newer tech names that were higher. We also had old school Cisco Systems trading higher, up more than 3%. This on bullish comments from Morgan Stanley. So even though we did have Haven bonds rallying once again, overall, the tone in Monday's Wall Street session was certainly risk on, with stocks climbing on the session. The major averages all up more than 1%. In New York, Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News.
Now, as the new Fed Chief Jerome Powell takes charge, the question arising here is whether he'll be able to stick to the gradual path of rate hikes. Here's Bloomberg's Kathleen Hayes on what the new Fed Chief is probably thinking.
I think it's safe to say that Jay Powell is not just thinking about volatility in Asian bond and currency markets. He's thinking in volatility in U.S. markets and basically around the world. He's going up before the House Financial Services Committee. Of course, this is his first testimony as chair of the Federal Reserve, so it's a very important one. We already have the monetary policy report from Friday. But the question, of course, is can Jay Powell stay on Janet Yellen's gradual rate hike path if these tax cuts go through, if they boost the economy as much as some economists say they will, and especially if they start boosting inflation. Let's take a quick look at hashtag BTV 4608. I like to throw this in the mix because what you're looking at is the blue line, inflation coming steadily down, 4.1%, and along the bottom you see inflation, the core deflator, one of the Fed's main measures, has gradually risen. I think how these curves go in the weeks and months ahead are going to determine how aggressive Jay Powell has to be. Jim Bullard, president of the St. Louis Fed, speaking at the National Association for Business Economics today, said his concern now, actually he's happy to see inflation rising a bit and inflation expectations. He's getting concerned the Fed could go a little too far on rates, a little too fast. And again, that's the kind of sentiment, that's the kind of concern that if that starts spreading around the world, I think it's going to reverberate in a lot of markets, including Asia.
Well, let's take a look at the Asian markets, and the momentum that was visible in the recent past continues in the Asian equities, with the Nikkei in Japan trading above a percent higher for the second day in a row. For all the updates from the Asian markets, though, we were joined live by Bloomberg's Rosalind Shin. Morning, Rosalind.
Good morning. You're right. The momentum, of course, has been picked up here in Asia as well, with most of the markets trading higher. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index up by 0.8% at this point in time. Now, we're looking at South Korea, mainly because the central bank left its key interest rate unchanged at 1.5%, which was largely expected. But we are looking ahead to comments by the Bank of Korea Governor, Lee Ju-yeol, who steps down on the 31st of March. So this will be his last statement. And he's expected to make comments any time now. Now, essentially, we're looking, of course, for any words he has to say on the state of the economy and what's expected for South Korea in the coming months. Kospi, we're saying, did pair earlier gains after the Bank of Korea decision came out, even though it was largely expected. The Kospi now gaining half of 1%, the won at 1068.8 to the US dollar right now. We are also looking at Japan, where the TOPIX rose to its highest level in almost 3 weeks. Right now, TOPIX is gaining 0.85%. And we are also looking at Aussie stocks advancing again for the fifth session now, looking to erase, in fact, this year's losses, largely, of course, due to those strong earnings which have been coming out from Australia. One group, Costa Group, that is up by nearly 10% right now. That is a company that grows and supplies fresh produce like fruit and vegetables, and it raised its profit growth forecast. So that is getting a little pop-up at this point in the session. We also want to look at AIA. Now, this is listed in Hong Kong. And this is up 2.6% after it announced results this morning, with full-year operating profit at $4.65 billion. So investors liking what they hear there. But as you have been saying, really the focus for many investors today is that testimony by Jerome Powell. He will be testifying in front of a House panel later on Tuesday, and investors will be hanging on to his every word to see what the direction is for the Fed this year. Back to you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Rosalind. Well, that's the word, really, and all eyes, as Rosalind said, will be on the Fed chair. But let's turn to the Indian market, which will open much before that happens. And Jayesh Khilnani and Agam Vakil are here to set you up for the day's trade and all that's happening in the futures and options space. Morning, guys. First to you, Jayesh. What's it looking like? Positive cues from overseas, clearly.
Morning, Alex. Clearly, positive cues coming in from the developed market and early Asian markets as well. And the SGX Nifty too is suggesting opening above the 10,650 mark. So currently trading about 62 points higher and opening above 10,650, as I was mentioning. Let's have a look at how the US market, the Indian ADRs closed on the US market. Tata Motors definitely the stock to watch out for. The ADR climbed more than 3% over there. Vedanta and Dr. Reddy's, that also climbed about more than 1% each. HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank also closed positive. However, watch out for the IT names as Wipro and Infosys ADR. That declined more than 1.5% each on that counter. But let's shift focus to the commodity space and have a look at what oil markets are actually doing. So WTI is trading very close to the 64 per barrel mark, and Brent is trading above the 67.50 mark. Now, this is the fourth day that we are seeing that oil prices have seen a surge and in fact have climbed to a 3-week high. As far as the metals are concerned, gold prices actually have inched up towards COMEX gold future, that is trading above the 1335 per ounce mark. Now this is the second day running that we have seen gold prices inch up. As far as the base metals are concerned, the index itself on the London Metal Exchange, that closed marginally positive, but individual base metals closed mixed. So we had nickel and tin, which actually gained more than 1%. Nickel and lead, that closed more than 1% higher. Tin was the sole loser with about 0.2% cut over there, and aluminium closed absolutely flat, with copper and zinc also eking out some gains for themselves. With that, let's have a look at some of the fund flows that we have. FIs have been net sellers yesterday as well. So FIs sold more than 1,100 crores, while DIs actually have bought nearly 1,410 crores. And the same story continues for the month itself. FIs have been net sellers to the tune of nearly 9,000 crores, while DIs have pumped in more than 15,000 crores in the equity market. As some of the key indices that are concerned, so we had the mid cap and the small cap index gain about 0.7 to 0.6%, but mind you, this was lower than what the Nifty and the Bank Nifty actually did. So some underperformance for the mid cap and small cap. As far as individual indices are concerned, top gainers we had the Nifty Auto and Nifty Realty. Nifty Realty actually surged more than 3%, and the Nifty Auto also climbed more than 2% for itself. As far as losers are concerned, Nifty IT, more than 1% lost over there as well. And given that ADRs actually managed to decline, this will be the space to watch out for. As far as the individual contributors were concerned, so Nifty actually gained about 91 points. What actually contributed was largely HDFC Bank, which was up more than contributed more than 16 points, followed by L&T, Maruti Suzuki, Kotak Mahindra Bank also contributed. In terms of the losers, once again we have the IT names featuring over here. Infosys and TCS were the top contributors. But with that, Agam's here to take us through the F&O space.
Right, Jay. So we did see the Nifty again move back about the mark of 10,500. Some strength coming in. What we've seen is fresh longs building in the Nifty futures. Similarly, coming down to the Nifty Bank futures as well, we are looking at an accumulation of around 2.5% increase in open interest. That said, when the WIX fell further down, now below the mark of 14, and we are expecting the range to remain within 13.5 to 14.5. But the Nifty put call ratio remains largely unchanged, just edged up slightly higher at around 1.46. Moving in terms of the way we've seen a change in your options, what we've seen is more writing in the 10,500 and 600 puts and unwinding in the 10,500 call. Which means that we're starting to look at a little more support build up in the upper levels. We've also seen Oriental Bank of Commerce, which did see a lot of weakness yesterday, move into the F&O band. So we are expecting restricted trade here until it comes out and we see some unwinding. But two other stocks that I'm keeping an eye on is Interglobe Aviation, which saw a lot of fresh longs. In fact, open interest surged by as much as 20%. And the other stock that I'm keeping an eye on is Reliance Communication, which also moved up by nearly 8% and now saw another 19% increase in open interest. On the whole, a lot of stocks to keep an eye on, as well as the index and whether or not they can hold on to these levels.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Agam. Let's take a check on the rupee and the bond market now. And Saloni Dhanuka is here to tell you all about those two markets. Morning, Saloni.
Good morning, Alex. So the rupee yesterday failed to hold on to early gains and it ended 0.1% lower at 64.79 levels against the dollar. Now the rupee ended lower despite a rally in the local equities market and a sluggish dollar overseas, as overall forex market sentiment turned volatile after a sudden spike in crude oil prices. Well, speaking of the bond market, sovereign bonds declined yesterday for the sixth day in 7 trading sessions on expectations that the latest GDP figures will show a faster pace of growth, thereby increasing pressure on the central bank to raise interest rates in the near term, according to a Bloomberg report. Also, the yield on the new 10-year benchmark security yesterday rose 2 basis points to end at 7.69%. While in terms of flows, global funds increased their rupee debt holdings yesterday by close to 180 crores, according to NSDL data. Well, on the global front, Asian currencies were trading higher, with South Korean won and Japanese yen gaining the most. While speaking of the dollar index, it ended steady after falling as much as 0.4% yesterday. The index now trades lower for the second day in a row. In the early Asian hours, it trades near 89.70 levels. Well, traders do remain cautious ahead of the new Fed chair testimony today. It will remain a key watch as it could determine whether dollar's recovery from 3-year lows can be sustained in the near term. And lastly, dollar rupee is trading flat in the non-deliverable forward market, which indicates a flat opening for Indian rupee in today's trade, Alex.
Thanks so much for that, Saloni. And sticking with one of those two markets, there's an update in the currency market. The Reserve Bank of India has allowed domestic and foreign investors to take larger positions in exchange traded currency derivatives. The central bank had, at the time of the last monetary policy, announced that it intends to raise the position limits, and a notification was issued to that effect on Monday. In that notification, the RBI said that domestic participants and foreign portfolio investors can now take a cumulative position of up to $100 million across all cross-currency derivative pairs without underlying exposure. This includes the dollar rupee, euro rupee, pound rupee, and yen rupee pairs. Until now, market participants were allowed to take positions either long or short up to a limit of $15 million in the dollar rupee pair without underlying exposure. In the case of other currency pairs, the combined limit was set at $5 million. This has now been reviewed and a combined limit, as I told you, of $100 million has been set. The central bank stated that the limits must be monitored by the exchanges and any breach of the limit must be reported to the RBI. Well, on to the big story from last evening. Ambuja Cements and ACC have put their merger on hold. The two companies have said that there are certain constraints to completing the merger at the moment, though they didn't say what those constraints were. Nikki Michandani is here to help us make sense of it. Nikki, what's the next step from here and what are brokerages saying?
Sure. Right now they're not pursuing the merger that has been put on hold, but then the ultimate goal is merger. This is what Ambuja Cement Board has suggested, and the decision comes after the special committee of directors which were formed to explore the possible synergies and the possibility of the merger. The decision comes right after the survey study which has been conducted by the committee of these directors. The extensive study was undertaken by the director, which ultimately led to this decision. And other highlights, we have agreement. Ambuja has actually signed in an agreement with ACC for sale and purchase of material and services. This is a key highlight. And also the agreement has been signed on mutual basis. This is to maximize synergy and also to unlock additional value for the shareholders. Besides that, the merger, the detail of material swap agreement will be disclosed and will be shared once the in postal ballot. What brokerages make out of it is, well, Motilal Oswal says that the constraint that they believe is they're talking about the limestone transfer charges which sum up to the tune of 64 per ton, and also the stamp duty. And also it says that the pact of sale and purchase of materials and services with ACC seems to be a difficult call right now. And overall the stated synergy benefits was up to 900 crore, which haven't been realized in the last 4-5 years. And it also goes on to say that with this, Ambuja and ACC will continue to lose market share to players like Ultratech and Shree Cement in absence of capacity addition and strong demand. IDBI Capital says it has a neutral to negative, says neutral because the merger has been put on hold and not been completely called off. Says it's negative because ACC comparatively in terms of valuation of EV per ton is cheaper as compared to Ambuja. So obviously investors were pinning in for a favorable exchange ratio, implying a margin, a good merger arbitrage, which is not going to be happening right now. And finally, we have Credit Suisse on merger, which says that the synergies now will be delayed and the sentiment for this will be negative because Ambuja already has a substantial stake in ACC and until now has not been able to derive synergies from there. It also says that existing of two brands in the competitive market right now is also negative, and that is something which needs to be fixed and taken care of. And it says that out of the presented synergies back in 2013 of 900 crore, more than half to come from material swaps. And this development definitely seems to be more weaker than market was expecting.
Thanks so much for that, Nikki. Now, the Enforcement Directorate is exploring all options to put together a rock-solid case against Nirav Modi and the other accused in the Punjab National Bank fraud case. And this includes cooperation with foreign governments and agencies. Charlene D'Souza has the latest updates in the case from the PMLA court. Listen in.
Now, the PMLA court has allowed the Enforcement Directorate to issue a letter rogatory to 6 countries in the Nirav Modi case. Now, what is a letter rogatory? A letter rogatory is a formal request from a court to a foreign court seeking judicial assistance. The LR will be issued to judicial authorities in 6 countries, which are USA, UK, Hong Kong, UAE, South Africa and Singapore. Now, ED claimed in court that almost rupees 6,500 crores was siphoned off to set up companies and also to buy properties overseas. Now, the ED also argued that Nirav Modi established companies like Diamonds R Us and Firestar International, and also said that he is an integrated diamond manufacturer who bought rough diamonds, polished them, and then sold them overseas. Now, after this, this request will be sent by the Ministry of External Affairs to other countries.
And in that case, PNB, that's Punjab National Bank, last evening disclosed to the exchanges that the quantum of unauthorized transactions can increase by a further 204.25 million US dollars. That's over 1,300 crore rupees. The total quantum of fraudulent transactions in the so-called Nirav Modi case is now pegged at over 12,700 crore rupees. On to the stocks in news now, and these, of course, are stocks that are likely to be buzzing in trade because of the fact that they're in the news. And Shraddha Babla has an entire list of these stocks to tell you about. Morning, Shraddha.
Morning, Alex. Of course, you've already spoken about PNB, so that brokerages had already trimmed the FY19 expected book value for PNB by about 20% or so. So this is going to be an additional hit as far as PNB is concerned. But that apart, we're also watching out for PVR. Now, Bloomberg reported that IMAX has reported a new 5-theatre pack with PVR cinemas. Creditors have approved Ion JSW offer for Monet Ispat. That's a ET report, and the offer, they say, that entails a payment of 2,450 crores to the lenders and an equity funding of 1,050 crores. So keep an eye out for Monet Ispat. Mahindra & Mahindra has collaborated with Korea's LG Chem for lithium-ion battery technologies for application in India. Sagar Cements has said they will acquire hydel power units of 4.3 megawatts worth 27 crores from Sagar Power in Andhra Pradesh. And you also have Berger Paints, which has said that they have plans to set up an integrated paint plant in Lucknow, but the details of the project have not been shared. But so these are some of the other names to keep an eye out for.
Thanks so much for that, Shraddha. On to the big brokerage calls of the day, and Somit Sarkar is standing by with two to tell you about. Morning, Somit.
Good morning, Alex. On the big brokerage calls for the day, first we have is JP Morgan and on Ashok Leyland. Now, the brokerage has upgraded the stock to overweight from neutral and have raised the target price to 160 from 130. Now, the brokerage is expecting double-digit volume growth in the medium and heavy commercial vehicles volumes. Now, these high volumes would normalize the discounts and thus improve margins for the company despite higher commodity cost. Now, they're expecting the company's EPS to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 23% over FY18 to 20, and it is also saying that the general freight demand and infrastructure spending would be positive over the next 2 years, and it expects the bus demand to make a comeback in financial year 2019. Lastly, it says that the valuations are cheaper and operating leverage on higher sales would drive the earnings going forward for Ashok Leyland. Second, we have is Deutsche Bank on Gujarat State Petronet. Now, they have maintained their buy rating on the stock, but have raised the target price to 255 from 249. Now, the brokerage is expecting the gas volume growth to continue. It expects the gas transmission volume to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 12% over FY17 to 20. Now, the brokerage is also expecting the gas transmission tariff to be revised by upwards of around 20% by June 2018. Lastly, it says that the FY18 is turning out to be an inflection point for the gas transmission business of Gujarat State Petronet, and Gujarat State Petronet is also the cheapest Indian gas utility with strong earnings growth outlook.
Thanks, Somit. Now, Bloomberg Quint sources report that the Directorate General of Safeguards has asked HUL to explain a profit of 119 crore rupees that it received between November and December. This is to ascertain that the amount was not received by profiteering. Nikunj Hori sums up the development.
The government has asked Hindustan Unilever to submit additional documents to verify claims made by the consumer goods major as to how it earned rupees 119 crore for the month of November and December. The government has sought information so that it can cross-verify the calculations made by the company to compute rupees 119 crore as the profiteered sum by HUL in the month of November and December. Remember HUL had declared that it earned rupees 60 crore in November as profiteering and 59 crore in the month of December, which it itself declared to the government that this is the sum that the company had earned due to the implementation of GST. Now the DG Safeguard has asked the company to submit documents to prove or verify how it came to this calculation of rupees 119 crore as the profiteered sum. The company confirmed this and told Bloomberg Quint that DG Safeguard has sought additional information and the methodology adopted by the company to compute the profiteered amount, and the company is in the process of sharing this information. Another interesting thing that the company told Bloomberg Quint is that it is anticipating a profit made due to GST in the month of January as well, and is in the process of computing and the company is in the process of computing the same and would share the details in due course of time.
Well, the slew of elections in the northeast continues, with Nagaland and Meghalaya going to polls today. Both the state assemblies have a total of 60 seats each, but voting will be held for 59 constituencies each. While the killing of an NCP candidate at Williamnagar in Meghalaya has delayed polling there, NDPP chief Nephew Rio has been elected unopposed from the northern Angam 2 constituency in Nagaland. Voting for the assembly polls in the neighbouring state of Tripura took place on the 18th of February. Results for all three states will be declared on the 3rd of March. Now, there's clearly lots to talk about, especially about the PNB case. The latest updates that came in yesterday about the quantum of the exposure being higher than earlier estimated, and for that you can log on to bloombergquint.com and look for Bloomberg Quint Live. There are also several other stories that you can find on the website bloombergquint.com, and here are just a few of them. As many as 11 companies bid for the government order to set up 2,000 electric vehicle chargers in government offices. The companies included BHEL, BHEL and Siemens. The order to install chargers follows the one for electric vehicles, and this is a bid by the government to popularize the use of electric vehicle technology. The Hinduja Group is considering buying a majority stake in More Bank, which is a state-owned bank in Mauritius. And in international news, the US Supreme Court rejected a Trump administration appeal aimed at ending deportation protection for young undocumented immigrants. Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of Daybreak, but all you need to know is up next, so do stay tuned. This is Bloomberg Quint.